And I think there's a study out there. I don't know. I don't want to. I'll tell you. It's like some study where they talk about
We gotta
how
look
long.
up these studies.
Yeah, we're gonna look up the study. We're going in the future. We'll have a list of studies that we're gonna have on deck. I'm gonna just look. I'm gonna Google. I'm gonna Google it right now. Hey, ChatGPT, what's the study that tells us? We're gonna have an interactive
I
one.
know it's real.
It's a real one, but like it's grit, right? It's grit.
Parents, teachers, and medical professionals are all concerned about the alarming, decades-long rise in teenage mental health issues, including depression, persistent feelings of loneliness, and drug addiction. The root causes are elusive. Cell phones and social media are prime suspects. No surprise there, but a 2023 study offers another explanation that's gaining traction. After sifting through surveys, historical datasets, and other cultural artifacts, researchers theorized that a primary cause is, quote, a decline over decades in opportunities for children and teens to play, roam, and engage in other activities independent of direct oversight and control by adults. Historical articles, books, and advice columns on child rearing depict a bygone era when young children walked or cycled to school alone and contributed to family and community life through meaningful chores and jobs. If that all feels vaguely mythical, data collected over the last 50 years reveals a correlation. Parents admit that their children play outdoors independently much less than they did at the same age, and data confirms a big drop in the number of kids who travel to school alone or are allowed to cross busy roads by themselves. Risky and unsupervised outdoor play, meanwhile, which might protect against the development of phobias and reduce future anxiety by increasing the person's confidence that they can deal effectively with emergencies, according to the researchers, is often frowned upon. That last point is crucial because dozens of studies suggest that happiness in childhood, and then later in adolescence, is driven by internal feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. In independent play, purposeful work, and important roles in classrooms and families are vital early forms of practice. Whatever the cause is, young children seem to sense that something is off. In one 2017 study, kindergartners who viewed images of fun activities routinely struck pictures that included adults from the category of play, rejecting the role of grown-ups in a domain that they clearly saw as their own.
Did you hear me yell?
Self-determination!
Self-determination! That's all, that's literally what my whole work is based on, is self-determination, those three things. It's one of the main reasons I left the classroom. So much of what we want young people to be in terms of motivation and determination is like deeply undercut by the way that society treats young people. So we ask them to be mature, we ask them to be self-determined, but then there's all these systems in place in terms of school, in terms of the hierarchy with adults, that really limit their ability to build those skills, to build like they can handle things on their own, that they can get better at something. But also the connected piece is like, I'm not doing this by myself, but I have the opportunities to do it. I have the opportunities in a safe community. I still have support. I still have positive adult relationships, but there's a lot more opportunity for me to really go out there and try things on my own and build my ability. And self-determination, building those three skills really leads to higher self-esteem. Production.
Are we already recording? Oh, okay. Yeah, of course we are. Yes. Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to Education Monthly. My name is Ashanti Branch. I am an educator, a mentor. I'm the founder of the Ever Forward Club. I was a teacher for 10 years of math education, and then I became an administrator for 3 years. And now I work on the outside of schools, doing a lot of work around social emotional development, youth leadership, peer mentoring, the work we do with the Million Mask Movement. And I'm going to pass it to my brother.
My name is Donovan Taylor Hall, or Dono Friend. I'm an educator, and most importantly, I'm a youth advocate. I travel across the country speaking with young people about mental health. My real focus is on helping young people develop skills to take care of themselves mentally and emotionally as they're growing. And I feel really grateful to be able to combine, both youth development and education, because there's so much crossover and there's also so much that both can kind of offer to each other. So it's been great being able to do that, and I'm happy to be here.
Glad you're here, man. I'm glad you're here. Well, this month, this is summer. This is the first month of summer. I think most schools are almost all of them out by now. We're close to the end of July or end of June. Excuse me, man. Don't do that. Don't rush. Don't rush it. I need more of. I need more summer still. And we just talked about this education article that we saw through Edutopia. This video. What were your
Yeah.
thoughts? What were your thoughts about it?
Well,
Let me tell you the title of it. What was the title? Let me tell you the title.
a new theory on the teen mental health crisis.
Boom. A new theory. So what was your thoughts about what they said? What was your thoughts?
Well, I have been like screaming about this for so long, because I was already doing this work in youth development programs. And then I started thinking about like, how do you make this curriculum based? Like things that we're doing in these spaces would be really great as like a skill based thing. And I started to research educational psychology, and I learned about self-determination theory. And self-determination is really about like building your belief in your ability to do things. And it's the three different pieces, which is the connectedness, the autonomy, and the self-efficacy. And so much what I found, so much of what we want young people to be in terms of motivation and determination is like deeply undercut by the way that society treats young people.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think when you talked about those three pieces, self-efficacy, connectedness, and autonomy, it reminds me that, me growing up, which is not the way it is today. Like there was a time when you were like, you go outside at the beginning of the day in the summer and you come back before the streetlights come on. That was our rule at my house and my grandfather's house. Be back here before the streetlights came on, meaning before it gets dark, right? Now, wherever our adventure took us, it took us, right? It took us to different neighborhoods. It took us if we were on bikes, if we were walking, if we were whatever we were doing. It took us drinking water out of somebody's faucet at the water hose, right? That hot. If you don't time it right, you drink some hot hose water. And imagine how many kids have never drank out of a hose. And not that you need to drink out of a hose to experience life, but how often are you just like, I need a bottle of water, right? And you're looking around, and that's small stuff. I'm talking about, and then it goes to bigger stuff, right? Like getting solutions handed to you by adults, because that's the only thing you've been taught, is that you're not allowed to make any decisions by yourself. And so those things what happen too is like, how do we help parents? Because sometimes I think parents are worried in their own right? And maybe have certain things to worry about, but how do we give them some freedom too to say, okay, they're going to be okay,
I think it's important. I don't know. This is like a pretty big topic to me, but I think when you tell people don't do something, the ego and the defense comes right up, where it's like, so I think it's important in these conversations to recognize where these things come from. And I've never really talked about this before, but I've been learning a lot about it. That whole push around stranger danger was like a push for safety for kids, but it also became a disconnect from community. And I think what's interesting is that we have never had more of a stronger lifeline to our children, yet we still are limiting their ability to be out in the world. What I hear from parents a lot of times is like, I just need to be able to check in with their kids. And it's like, if you say, well, you don't need to check in with your kids during school, well, you live in America and we know what happens in schools. Like, let's be honest, not just like bullying, but also like there's been shootings in schools multiple times. And so this idea that I need to be able to reach my kid is a big thing, but it also has increased this like hover parent thing. And what I've noticed really specifically when I think about that time, I think about Halloween. I think about like how little people like lean into that of just going out with your friends. Like that's what we would do. When I was in sixth grade, I'd meet up with like 10 friends and we would walk the streets for like 5 hours at a time. But I think the increase in media, I think the type of media that we show, right? When I took journalism classes, the first thing they taught me is dead kids make the front page. which means that like no matter like the more messed up a story is, the better it's going to do. And so we push these images and we talk about the dangers of stranger, and we talk about all the messed up things that people do to kids, which is true that there are people who do those things to kids, but also it disconnects community. It disconnects that it takes a village. I mean, being someone that is not a teacher and a speaker, I'm literally trying to, just like you, be a community partner, because we can't put it just on teachers. We can't put it just on parents. We're losing that ability to build community. And I think when it comes to autonomy, the biggest thing is like we need to teach young people how to set boundaries, what is not safe, what is a safe and unsafe a relationship. And I have to talk with the students that I stream my video games for a lot about that kind of stuff. They'll say, I'll send you my address, like, so you can send me something. And I'm like, buddy, that is not safe. Like, I am like a grown person that does not know you, right? Like, don't give your address out. But just moments like that is really about teaching it. But I think that there's so much fear built up because we push these stories of what happens to kids when we let them go and blah, 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 that we're instilling that fear in the people who are watching, who are then having kids and they're terrified. And so it makes sense. I think both things can be true. It makes sense that there is a bigger fear and that people are kind of acting on that fear. But at the same time, we're really missing out an opportunity for young people to go out into the world and explore. It's that swimming pool thing we talked about before, right? Like the walls are shrinking instead of kids going out and swimming and building their capacity and coming back to the wall to take a break. We are shrinking these pools. And then these kids get to college and they have no idea how to do anything for themselves. And it's like scheduling and doctor's appointments and banking. And I would watch these students have like complete breakdowns over having to do something for themselves. And it's frustrating to see the older generations point down on them and say, well, these kids are soft and blah, 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 but they are the result of us. They are the result of what we have done and what we've put out into the world. And I think it's alarming, honestly. But with the work that I do with mental health, I was like, I'm not a mental health expert, I'm an advocate, but I still do skill-based mental health stuff because I'm like, you don't need to wait for an adult to come in and give you the tools or to tell you you can do this for yourself. You can start doing this right now. And that's all about the self-determination piece, is like, there's things that you can do to take care of yourself. And that's what I think kids are looking for a lot, is the ability to say, I get to choose this. I mean, having people tell you what to do all the time is so exhausting. We just think because they're kids, they have to listen to us. And the core of it is safety. We know what's best for them. But I think sometimes it goes a lot further than that. And then we're having a lot of missed opportunities, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything you said, I really resonate with. And one thing in particular, the idea of how parents have sometimes created this thing that we say we didn't want. We want kids to be autonomous. We want them to be able to make good decisions. There's one funny cartoon I saw. It's in Spanish. Not a cartoon. It's actually a little reel, I think it was. It was just like, 19-year-old young man. He called the maintenance guy at his apartment building, and he like the maintenance guy came in with his little toolbox, and he's like, "Hey, what's happening?" He's like, "Yeah, I have a problem here in my kitchen." And then he went into the kitchen, and he was like, "Look," and he says, "What's wrong with the?" And the maintenance guy went in and turned the water on. He says, "Is it the temperature not working?" He said, "No." He says, "Look at all these dishes in the sink." He's like, like normally when I'm at home, I just put the dishes in the sink and then they just end up clean magically, right? And the guy's looking at this kid like, it was like there's like a funny commercial, right? Like a funny cartoon, like how we take for granted these things that we are used to just happening for us without washing clothes. Like for like, I've been washing clothes since I could reach the button to turn the washer on. Like, and I think that, and I know the young people don't hate when adults say, "I used to do this." I'm not trying to. I'm here to say we have somehow failed you as adults. We have tried to protect you from pain, and maybe try to protect you from discomfort. And so we've done so much for you that then when it comes up in your life, you think that something is wrong with you, or you think that something's wrong with the world, but it actually is just we had done such a good job of protecting you from feeling any of the discomfort of the world, that now when you experience it, you're confused.
Yeah.
And I think like the same thing with when I first learned about trophies that weren't first, second, or third place, right? Gold, silver, bronze. When people were like seventh place, eighth place, I'm like, what is this? And they were like, oh, we just don't want any kids to feel left out. And I was like, and I got the logic of what the parents were trying to do. And I was like, but okay. And then you wonder what happens now when you see when kids, when they don't understand how that loss is. I didn't place.
Yeah.
It seemed like the Olympics. I didn't place. I'm in the third place. I'm past third place. I don't get a medal. That's just kind of how it is. And I don't need to feel bad about myself. I just need to say, okay, I got to work a little harder. And I think when we did all that stuff, when adults tried to protect kids from the pain that they experience, some of those pains we don't want them to experience. But some of the pains are just natural parts of life that we have to figure out how to help them have a healthy relationship with challenge and struggle and the natural things that life brings us.
Yes, I want kids to struggle. I do. I don't want them to suffer. And I think going out into the world and having to deal with things and feeling deeply unequipped and feeling deeply not like capable of doing these things, that leads to personal suffering versus struggling, which is going through hard things. I think what we've lost is the ability to do hard things. That's something I struggle with all the time. I mean, I literally broke my laptop just trying to write a description for a course I wanted to do. And I literally, that was struggling, but because of the mindset that I had around it, it turned into suffering where I'm like, what's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah. But in reality, I didn't get pushed a lot as a kid. I had unconditional love, but I never had an adult be like, lay firm consequences for me. And so then as an adult, when consequences happened, I was not ready for them. I didn't understand it. That's a huge thing. I wish that I could be like so savvy right now and be like, well, let me cite this research, but I just learned about this and I don't know the name, so I'm so sorry. I'm reading this book called Do Hard Things, and they were talking about where this whole self-esteem, the participation trophies thing came from. Because for a lot of people, they just assumed that parents, like the millennial parents or the generation above millennials, kind of were like soft on their kids and stuff. But we pushed it as a government. In the early 90s, they put money into researching self-esteem. And what happened was this main guy who pushed self-esteem, that's the answer, self-esteem. He did all this research and basically showed that there was correlation between like accomplishment and self-esteem, which is like we want people to feel accomplished even if they didn't make it, which is where this whole participation thing came from. But basically what happened was his report, that was like a small excerpt in his report. The rest of the report was like, there's no strong correlation. And what it actually found is that self-esteem is not built through accomplishments. It's way more built through time and practice and effort, through making mistakes, through going out there and actually trying something. And whatever result you get, the result is not what really builds the self-esteem. The result is the process. The result is a process. And it's so interesting because we were talking about video games last time, but I think all of those things exist in video games. When you think about how you level up, how your skills get better, like when you think about self-determination, video games is one of the most interesting things to look at because you see those things, you get that immediate feedback, you build your confidence. I know for me, it's the same thing. I just did my first solo Fortnite run because the kids were like yelling at me. They were like, you got to do it. Just do it by yourself. And it was the best I did. But then afterwards, they were like, you're so good. You're so good. And I said, I don't even think that it's good. I'm just happy I tried it. I'm just happy that I went in there and tried it because now I have proof that I can do it. Yeah. And I don't care that I was like placed 20 out of 100, right? I just care that I went in there and I put the effort in. And so even for myself as an adult, trying to build self-determination is like, it cannot be based on the accomplishments and the awards. It cannot be based on other people being like, you are worthy enough. I don't need people to tell me that I'm good and perfect. I need to get out there and do the hard work. I need to go out there and make mistakes and fail and try and learn from these things because that's what really builds self-determination. I know I just talked a lot, but I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
Do you know Miyazaki?
Say more. No, this sounds familiar, but I don't have an intimate knowledge.
Miyazaki makes animated films, and some of the most popular animated like anime films that became westernized. So they would bring these movies from Japan to America. So like Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, Howl's Moving Castle. It's some of the best art out there, but I love Miyazaki movies for a very specific reason, and I didn't really understand it until I got deeper into my work. Most of Miyazaki's films, some are about adults, but most of his films are about kids. And these kids get put in these really tough situations and they have to figure it out. None of his movies has the adult coming in and saving the day. It is always about the kids going through it, and he shows the struggle. Spirited Away is one of the, I can't. It's my favorite film of all time, but this little girl goes through so much and she has to like break down at times. She has to ask for help at times. She has to like really stand up for herself, but you just witness her building self-determination. And it's like my favorite scene from the movie is when her friend sits with her and she's just crying and she's just getting it out because it's exhausting. But then she gets up and she keeps going. And that's one of the things that I wanted to base my work around, which is like, I don't want to be the adult that comes in and fixes things for kids. I want to be the adult that comes in and offers them tools so they can try and figure these things out for themselves. And if it gets tough and if it's not working, they can come back and learn some more. But that's where the real growth happens. I don't care about their accomplishments. I care about their effort and I care about their attempts, because that's what really helps people grow. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that was fantastic.
I am passionate about this, bro.
Well, tell me, just for the spelling take, because I this is new to me. I'm going to look it up today. I'm going to try and watch it. I'm going to try and watch Spirited Away. Mia, is it Miyazaki or Mia?
Miyazaki. M-I-Y-A. Mia. I'm saying it. M-I-Y-A-Z-A-K-I.
Okay, I was in a whole nother genre of letters. Okay.
Spirited Away is the best one. And again, he does have some movies that are not kid based, but for the most part, like most of his movies are kids. And there will be adults. That's what I like about it too, is that there will be adults that offer guidance. There are adults who like are kind of rest stops for them. There's a woman in the Spirited Away who literally just like helps her kind of take care of herself and reminds her like, you need to eat and you need to sleep, and this is tough, and keep going. And she just keeps going, but that adult doesn't hold her hand and walk her through it. And I think like this mental health stuff, the more and more that I'm going into these spaces where we're talking about youth mental health, the less and less I'm seeing young people being centered in those conversations. It is, we know what's best. And people are saying, what's causing this? And we don't want to ask kids because we don't trust that their experience is valid because they're a kid. But instead of just sitting with them and saying, what is affecting this? What do you think is coming up for you? And I think that is frustrating, because then it becomes the thing where we are trying to fix something where they have no power in it, right? And especially because schools will say, tell these kids to ask for help. They're so stressed. And I'm like, babe, we're doing it to them. Like, they're like, I don't know where this comes from. And I'm like, it's this. It's all of this. What do you mean?
And I imagine that even with that, because even in the anime world, I'm new to anime, and but people all for lots of years have said, "Oh, you should watch Avatar: The Last Airbender." Right? They told me I should watch it. Students would say after they went to a workshop with the math, they were like, "Oh, you should watch this," and I'm like, "I'll get to it one day." And I remember when it finally came out into the like the Humans series, I finally watched it. I know it's very different for some people, but it was a powerful like story of a boy who had been given a responsibility that was bigger than he thought he could handle. And his friends, other youth, were like, we got you. We're going to support you. We see it in you. We know there's something special about you. We're going to help you. And it's like what I've tried to build through Ever Forward is that kind of space of how do you help young people, equip them with tools. I want them to know that they can trust themselves and they can make good decisions and that they have it in them, but they have to like work that muscle. And that muscle requires them to like, okay, what are my solutions? What are my possible options here? You know, when a young person is struggling, and I had one I talked to on the phone earlier today, trying to apply for this program, trying to figure something out, trying to figure out how do I get my transcript. Like He said, "Oh, they're not answering the phone." I'm like, "Okay, well, what are your other options?" In my mind, I'm like, "What do you mean they're not answering the phone?" Like, you thought because you called once that's a way to. Now I have to be careful. Don't go into teacher mode. I have to go into curious mode. What else can you do?
Yeah.
What else can you do? Don't and not wanting to give the answer, but wanting to help him find the answer. It's in you. You got plenty of ideas of what to do if somebody doesn't answer the phone. Like it's in your pocket, by the way, but nonetheless, and he's like, "Oh, I need to probably look it up online." And right on, right? But how quickly can you get stuck if you thought that because I called and no one answered, then then I have nothing else I can do? And I think that's what mentoring is so important. And mentoring comes from that level. That's what happened in the Odyssey, right? That's what mentors said to Telemachus, right? Like, "Hey, where are you going? What do you want to do? What's your next move? How can I support you in this journey?" Right. And I think that's so necessary. And I think we, as teachers, as educators, there's all ways that we build these educators. We need to help young people do that. I was at a workshop the other day, and what was happening was a lot of the young people were disconnected a little bit, and there was another adult in the room. And every time I would give an instruction, the adult would, like, literally after 3 seconds of silence, like I can handle a good 20, 30 seconds of silence. After a good 3 seconds of silence, this other educator would say, "Hey, what he's trying to say is," and I had to be careful because I didn't want to tell this educator, "Shut up." Right? I'm trying to give him an eye, but I'm in the front of the room. He's in the front. I'm like, why do you what are you doing? It's almost like this idea of silence is not okay. And so therefore I'm going to fill in the gap of silence. And I get what he was doing. He was really trying to help the students who are disengaged to be more engaged. He was trying to, and I think that my style and his style is very different. And there in the style that person had was I'm going to fill up every minute with words. So silence doesn't be uncomfortable. And I'm like, let's sit here and let me just stare at you. Yeah. Let me stare at you, not answering because you don't want to answer, not answering because you don't know the answer, not answering because you're afraid to ask for help or ask a question, but we're going to just deal with the discomfort. And I'm okay with that as a teacher who believes that students need to feel that.
Yeah.
And the person
No, sorry.
No, and the person who processes slower, he probably hadn't even heard the question yet. He was still just processing what the question was being asked, and he hadn't even got a chance to let it formulate. And when that feeling, when somebody fills up the space with more words, you're just like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's the answer. Okay, good." And your brain has now gotten unconsciously lazier because now you're used to people just filling in your discomfort or your quietness with the answer.
Yeah. And it's wild too, because it also breaks trust with yourself. We don't allow young people to come up with answers and to try things, to say, maybe I do know something. And one of the strategies I use in my classroom and in my speeches is, before I say, here's a list of things, I ask students what they think. And every time I do it, so one is what is an example of negative self-talk? And I'm like, what do you think? And then students, especially middle schoolers, high schoolers are always so much more hesitant to speak in those things, but middle schoolers are throwing themselves out of the chair to talk. and they always name almost every single thing that's on my list. And so then I pull the next slide up and I'm like, look, you all said that. Yeah. You said this. I didn't need to tell you. You knew it. But what I'm trying to do is help them build their intuition and their trust with themselves. And I think when we think about the answers, when you think about regular educational classes, that's usually a little bit different, because you may not know that skill. But when it comes to you, when it comes to knowing you, that's where we need to not invalidate the trust that kids are building with themselves, the trust that they can say, this is what's wrong, this is what I need. And sometimes you have to just sit with it and to be able to say, we may not come to an answer right now, and that's okay. I think one of the quickest ways to build self-determination, and I say this to them because I never want to manipulate. I'm all about influence. I never want to be tricky and be this is why I'm doing this, right? You didn't know. But literally just saying let me offer this to you, leave it or take it.
Yeah.
And so that way I still get to be I'm the mentorship role, but they have to make the conscious decision to take it. That's right. When they do take it, it is different from, I'm doing this because he told me to, but I'm doing this because I want to. That builds self-determination, right? So just little things like that. And I get pushback from parents and teachers who are like, what am I supposed to just let them do whatever they want? And I'm like, this is very different, right? Again, they need those firm four walls to the pool, right? And I'm not about being like just free for all, do whatever you want. I'm not going to offer you like a curfew. I'm not going to offer you like things that literally I got to keep you safe, right? Like if you said, do you want to eat dinner? It's up to you. And kids, you know what I mean? Kids need that kind of guidance and support, but specifically around handling problems, specifically around thinking about their needs, we should not be jumping to solutions. And I get two pieces of feedback from kids around this. The first one is that is one of the things that sticks out the most to them in my presentation, which is wild because it is literally just the intro. But kids will be like, I really appreciated that he told me that I didn't have to take it or I didn't have to listen. They appreciate that. And then the second one is something deeply profound that I forgot and don't know. Just genuinely, it slipped out of my head, bro.
It's there.
I got it.
There you go.
Second one is one of the most frustrating things with young people when they talk about what they're going through with the adults in their life is the adults try to fix it. The adults immediately jump into solution giving, like immediately, when a lot of times what they need is just a place to talk about it, a place to be like, here is what's going on. Here's how I feel. And then what you said is great, which is leaning into curiosity and asking deeper questions, right? As the guide, right? For this tough conversation. But if you jump in right away and say, you just need to do this, you need to trust me, I've been where you've been before, it invalidates the self-determination building part,
Yeah. I think, I have a belief that what is needed in this next season of education, especially what we're still reeling in from the pandemic, and we will continue to be reeling in it for years to come, I think is really helping young people navigate the world anew. And I think that when we navigate the world the way it is today, the way that schools are going to try and protect students from cheating using ChatGPT and all these other services that are out there. Some students have still don't even know what it is. Some students are like, they're starting their own little businesses at 14 years old because they learned, I can do XYZ, and all these ideas are out there in the world for free, right? And some are afraid of it or wondering what is going to take away from them. When I did this activity yesterday or a couple of days ago with young people, it was around this idea of emotional language. Like, what is your language around emotions? Because I said to them, the more that you can clearly communicate what you are experiencing, feeling, going through, the easier that you can begin asking the right questions for people out in the world to find the solutions.
Did you teach me that?
I don't know.
That is like one of my main things, bro. Ooh,
man.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was sitting here like, that sounds real familiar now. That's I'm so sorry.
I'm learning from you too. So we probably, who knows? But I gave them the emotion wheel. I had them turn it on the back. I had them write. Tell me, let's see if you can list 5 to 10 emotion words that are connected to emotions. And I said, hopefully you can list the 5, but if not, don't worry. Just do as many as you can list. And I'm launching, and some are resisting, some are whatever, but they're writing some. And I said, okay, now I want you to know that there are dozens and hundreds of emotion words. Let's make that number up, whatever the number is. I want you to turn the paper over, and they turned it over. And I said, I want you to find your words on this list, which is the emotion wheel. It just starts with the 6, root emotions, and it just gives a wider vocabulary. And I said, the better that you can help yourself, like, find where your words are, find where they fit. Is it from the anger, from the sad? Is it from joy? Is it from disgust? Is it from fear? Where is that emotion come from? And know how many other words are around that word. The more you can increase your vocabulary, the more access you're going to have. And I think what I tried to do with those young people the other day, when I'm doing workshops all the time, but that one that stood out to me, because some of them, when they turned that wheel over, you just saw them like, oh, I know that word. I know that one. It wasn't at the top of their brain when they were asked it, but in their mind, they're like, oh, I know this one and I know that one. And how do we help young people begin to say, wow, I have a lot of knowledge in here. I need to find ways of getting access to it faster. Like, when someone asks, as opposed to but we have a device that we don't have to memorize a whole lot of things. But when I'm trying to communicate with somebody, I need to have those words on deck. And so how do you begin to build that vocabulary? And I think for young people who sometimes they're just like, help me. And I'm like, oh, what do you need help with? And they're like, this. And I'm like, no, that don't work for me. Well, like clearly explain what you need help with, because I'm not going to start from the beginning. Tell me what you know, and then I'll help fill in the gap between what you know and what you don't know. But you got to at least start me off, right? And that's when the students would ask for help. And as a teacher, I was like, okay, what do you need help with? Well, there's this right here. I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, tell me what you do know. And then we start there, right? And then we get mad, like, why are you asking me a question with a question? I'm like, because your question is empty. Your question is empty. I need a full question to help you with this next part, you know? And I think I know they were going to get frustrated. I know that some of them would like want to yell at me, or they did. I'm like, I'm here to help you. I am the teacher. I am going to help you. I'm not resisting helping you, but you got to give me something. And I think it's how do we begin to do that work? When I began to be an administrator observing teachers, I would watch teachers fill gaps so quickly before giving students opportunity to even grapple with what they don't understand, right? And I'm like, well, what am I want you to find where you're at and tell me where you're stuck, so then I can help from there, as opposed to like taking you back to level 1 when you're actually already at 7. You just think you're stuck, but you know up to level 7. Let me help you get up to the finish line, you know? And that's some of the work that we have to do with educators, is helping educators do more than teach a subject, but learn how to teach. So positive psychology, like you were talking about in the beginning. How do we help young people find efficacy? Some students have a hard time with struggle. I heard this recently. What is your relationship with struggle? If every time it gets hard, you quit, your relationship with struggle is limited. And that's going to make life so much harder for you. But if you're willing, I think there's a study out there. I don't know. I don't want to. I'll tell you. It's like some study where they talk about.
We gotta look up these studies.
Yeah, we're gonna look up the study. We go in the future. We'll have a list of studies that we're gonna have on deck. I'm gonna just look. I'm gonna Google it right now. Hey, ChatGPT, what's the study that tells us? We're gonna have an interactive one.
I know it's real.
It's a real one, but like it's grit, right? It's grit. You're willing to struggle longer with a problem. You don't quit after 30 seconds of like, I don't know what to do. Or you've learned, okay, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that, I try that. Now I'm really stuck. And you're willing to go a little deeper. I think and that's the grit. That's a concept of grit, right? How long are you willing to struggle with difficult things, as opposed to like just, and I'm glad Chloe's raised her hand. I want you to raise your hand. I'm not against that, but I don't want to fill in a gap that I can't even fully see, you know? That's the work.
Yeah. And I think too, like the different levels, I've been talking about this a lot recently. You have adults who don't have access to emotions and who don't have access to this language, who are in charge of young people who might have a better understanding of it. And so then that power dynamic is switched, because the only qualifier is I'm the adult. I know what's best. But I've heard 14, 15-year-olds talking about self-compassion, talking about boundaries, talking about negative self-talk. And then I've seen adults throw absolute fits when they can't express themselves, when they physically assault someone. I think it's so weird that a status of power is I can harm you, right? Like that is like, I'm so angry and I don't know how to express it, that I'm going to hurt you. I think it's so weird that some people lift that up, because what that's just saying is I don't know how to express myself. I don't know how to talk about what's coming up. I saw a really beautiful job of scaffolding, because I love the emotion wheel, because I think you're 100% right. When you can name the specific thing that you are feeling, then you can get the specific whatever you need, right? Whether it's support, resources, because if a kid says bad could be tired, it could be frustrated, it could be disrespected, it could be unmotivated. Like there's so many things, but sometimes it's even harder to like, to know what those words are. And so I saw this teacher, and I don't remember who did it, but she had a picture. You may have seen it before. It's like a tree, and there's like 18 little white cartoon blobs, and they're all doing something completely different on the tree. Like from like smiling with peace signs to like a puddle on the ground. And so I was like, this is interesting, because I thought to myself in that moment, like, this isn't really giving them access, right? But then that teacher was like, okay, cool. What do you think this one feels? right? And then they're like, what they're saying is coming up and they're expanding their vocabulary. But I think for thinking about empowering young people with mental health, we have to think about building emotional capacity to be able to say, here's what I'm going through. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I need. You can't ask for what you need if you don't know what you're going through. And so I think I get so frustrated as a youth speaker for mental health. These schools will be like, tell them it's okay to ask for help. Tell them they need to ask for help. Tell them they need to ask for help. Well, one, I did that at a school and a girl messaged my account and was like, I asked for help and they told me 4-month wait, which was wild because, again, we're telling them to build this skill. And then when we have the opportunity as a society to give them that space, how many of them have resources to it? How many of them have resources? The guidance counselor at that school was great. And she's like, I'm here twice a week for 2 hours. And it's just me with like 600 kids, right? And so it's wild because if we're gonna go out there and tell them to empower them to do these things, we need to be able to back them up when they actually need the help, when they actually need the support. So with me, it's like sometimes I get a little bit anxious because I feel like I'm not really helping them, but I'm doing the most I can in terms of normalizing, putting words to these things. I had a young man at a speech literally tell me that because of his dad, who was always telling him like crying is a weakness and stuff, he was grieving the loss of someone in his community. And he was like beating himself up for being sad about it. And he was like, and then I heard you talked about it's okay that this is a normal part of life to feel sad. And this is not like, this is not a kid that doesn't have the intelligence. You know what I mean? This kid was bright. This kid was, but it's what's being taught to him. And so when you have people, this is what's tough about this age. When you have people who have never had these conversations, who invalidate these things. I hear adults do it all the time, invalidate kids setting boundaries, invalidate youth protesters, invalidate these youth programs and stuff because they didn't understand it and they don't need it. It's not at all about the program or whatever the people are doing. It's about the person who's saying that. They're saying, I don't see value in this because I never had it, right? But they don't even understand all the ways that that's affecting them. You know what I mean? So even with that fine thing that we were talking about earlier, with the I'm fine thing, I've had to teach people recently that it's okay to be fine, right? That's an okay place to be. But the reason that I have to teach that is because we've been taught that when people say fine, that it's like a secret hidden thing, right? That we have to pry or we need to go deeper. But in reality, like sometimes people are just fine and that's an okay place to be. And so when kids say I'm fine, I trust you with that. And if you're not fine, this is a space to talk about it. But if you're fine to not talk and you're okay right now, we don't need to do it. So the kids I coach for years, they're like, I'm fine, I'm doing all right. And I trust it because we've been doing this work. And I know that if they're not fine, that they'll talk to me about that. But I tell them that a lot, which is like, if you tell me that you're fine and you're not fine, I can't help you. Right. Yeah. I can't give you anything. I'm not going to pry. And if you leave being like, he didn't help me with nothing, he didn't see through my disguise, that's on you, homie. That's on you. And I tell people, I tell that to my friends. If you tell me you're fine, they'll say, I'm fine. I'm like, hey, if you're fine, I trust you. And if you're not, let's talk about it. But I trust this. I trust it, you know?
And I think you give them the room to know that, okay, I heard the word. I'm letting you know that if that's where it is, great. And that's what our shirt is about, because the shirt says I'm fine, but we know that it sometimes is a loaded word, right? And so we in our work and our endeavor forward is I'm always like, oh, tell me about fine. Tell me what's fine today, because I want you to know that. Oh,
hold
no,
on
it's good.
I'm so sorry. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
So sorry.
Something's happening.
Sorry.
Oh, that's part of it. He wanted his treat.
No, it's whenever people, and it always happens this time. It's like they will be fine the entire time, but whenever someone comes home, the dogs lose their minds until they get inside. And for some reason, it just happens to be, I'm like, let's podcast 30 minutes before.
Well, listen, I know you got to go to your next event, so I want to make sure we close right now. So I'm
all right. I'm just streaming for the kids, but they will drag me through the mud if I don't show up on time.
Well, no, we should do that. So let's Ryan, we're gonna just like recap here. We're gonna just like head to the close.
Do you want to finish that? I'm so sorry. Do you want to finish your thought about because I think it was really cool, the shirt, the I'm fine piece.
Oh yeah. So we designed So we created the shirt that says, a student in Arizona created the shirt that says on the outside, I'm fine, but it was loaded with all these other words. And what we want people to know is that, yes, if you are fine, absolutely. And if you are good at using, some people say they're good and they're not good. So what we know is that words mean things. And sometimes we have let words begin to start drifting into just kind of like, it's just to get me out of the conversation. And we always say, hey, you don't want to tell me anything you don't want to tell me. I'm just letting you know if you're ever not good, I'm good. I'm here for you. Because if you've been taught that that's how you get people just to keep moving, then so it's both sides of it. And I'm glad you talk about that because that's what we try and do. We don't tell people don't say fine. We're saying is fine meaning I'm all right, everything's all right, good and moving on, or am I using it as a cover up because I don't think you have time, I don't think you care. And so that's the work that we are excited about. And listen, families, parents, we're not trying to make it sound like this is easy work. It takes work. And so for your young people in your lives, for the young people that you support, parent, mentor, coach, teacher, church leader, group leader, community worker, please be mindful of how much room we are providing them to understand life in a bigger way. That's what our ask is in Ever Forward. Ask the questions, be curious, let them be in silence to think about an answer. Let them have no answer. And then come back and check in again. So that's the last word I have for here. Do you want to give a last word to folks in this Education Monthly as we move into summer? And
I would offer, I think sometimes we forget that kids become adults and that kids retain a lot that they learned from when they were kids, and that the way that they treat people is often how they were treated as young people. And sometimes people, I think parents especially, I get this from parents a lot, they're so afraid they're doing it the wrong way. And one of the best things that I would offer is like, it's okay to tell them I'm working on this. It's okay to be like, hey, I want to be better at supporting your emotions, or I'm working on like making more space for you to talk. Like what a sign of respect for them, but also what a powerful way to do the work together. What a powerful way, because when you have an adult in your life saying like, I'm not perfect at this, I just learned this new thing and I want to get better at it for you because I care about you, right? What that shows them that these adults in my life are working on things and that it's okay to work on things. We're so afraid to make mistakes, but we live in a society that pushes that, but mistakes are where the learning happens. And so I think it's a really powerful thing. If you are an adult that's like, I would like to try these things, if you have a relationship with a young person that you feel close with, whether it's a child or a student or someone in a group, to say like, hey, I'm working on like creating more space, or I'm working on like allowing you to process things more. And so when I make a mistake, I can say, oh, oops, I'm working on it. I'm growing, I'm learning. And then it's like, they're not forced to do it by themselves. I wish that more adults would let kids in on the fact that we're all learning. You don't just have to have it figured out. And if you're an adult who says you've got it figured all out, I would encourage you to commit to a long life full of learning. Because there's always more to learn. There's always more to grow.
Keep learning. Well, what was the word you screamed at the beginning of the show?
Self-determination. Look it up. It's a theory. God, it's a whole thing. It's been around forever. And people are like, we don't understand. And I'm like, just look, bro.
Ask ChatGPT. It'll give you a whole plan. It'll give you a whole...
Heck no.
I'm an advocate. I'm not afraid of it. But don't use it if you don't feel comfortable with it. I'm just naming that there's lots of resources out there. You can look it up on your own. There's lots of tools, lots of videos. There's unlimited resources out there in the world. Find the right voices that are going to help you do the work that you believe in. And so for Education Monthly in the month of, what month are we in? June? But this is going to be August, July, September, summertime edition. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Brother Donovan. It's good to see you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Folks, we'll see you soon. I'm Ashanti Branch signing off from California.
I'm not telling them where I'm at.
Okay, we're not telling them where you're at. And Dinah's signing off from that room right there, and we'll see you soon from the Twitch universe. He's signing off from the Twitch universe, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. Peace. Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there is more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you. Thank you.